Hello, my name is Vanshika Agarwal. I would be guiding you through the GEPI experience, which I experienced during the SCMHRD procedure of MBA program. So let's start with it. Um, just a second. So to guide you through the PPT, the first statement, obviously, it was conducted on 28th January 2025. Then it was my afternoon slot, as in they had different slots. One was in morning one, which started at 8:30, and I was allotted with the afternoon slot, which started at 1 p.m. Then after that, it was the basic procedure, wherein we were approximately, you could say that in that you could that Zoom meeting. In that Zoom meeting, we had a room wherein we were approximately 25 to 30 people probably, and they were continuously getting added and shifted to different rooms, because of which I'm not certain about the exact number. So initially there was the attendance procedure wherein we were just a second. Acha, okay. So right now, just the basic, we are talking about the basic procedure. So we started with the attendance, then it was the group exercise, as you could see, then it was a personal interview, and then the last step was the document verification. So the waiting time was approximately 15 minutes, which was when you were getting added continuously and then people were shifted to different rooms. So before even the attendance part, there was approximately a waiting time of approximately 15 minutes. Then as you could say, there were approximately 24 people in my batch. By batch, I meant when they shifted people after the attendance to a specific waiting room, in that particular batch, there were approximately 24 people. So let's moving ahead. In case of attendance, it started at 1:15, as you could clearly remember. That was a waiting time of 15 minutes. Then there were a few documents which were required while we were supposed to probably mention that whether we were present or not. So the first thing was ID proof, the second one was snap admit card, scorecard, and the call letter. So what exactly we were supposed to do over there is that the camera was on. So like for example, there's the ID. So we are supposed to keep the ID proof at a specific distance from the camera in order to make it clearly visible for the invigilator, so that they could make sure that the person who is sitting there and the person who was called was the same. So this is how we were able to verify the documents on the Zoom meeting, via the Zoom meetings. Then after the completion of the attendance, we were supposed to sorry, we were shifted to different waiting room, wherein we were divided between different batches. As I remember mentioning, 24 batch, so a batch of 24 students before starting with the group exercise process. Then moving towards the group exercise, it started at 2 p.m. because obviously this whole procedure takes time, dividing the whole people in everything. So before going towards the case study, let me walk you through the whole procedure. So after dividing the group into 24 people, what they did was they further divided the people into 8 groups, into people of eight. Into group of 8 people. So then we were allotted to different waiting rooms apart from that. And over there, we were given a case study. So as you could read, this is the particular case study which we were provided. So just to give you a gist, I mean, obviously you could pause it and, read it from your perspective as well. So the gist was that there was an oil refinery company, and from by mistake they had from their factory outlet some kind of contaminants were discharged in the water body. Now there were different stakeholders which were affected, obviously, which you could read after, which you could understand after reading the whole case study. And what we needed was that, let me just show you the stakeholders. Yeah. So there were 5 stakeholders, which, as far as I remember. So what we are supposed to do is that we were required to provide a plan of action, an instant plan of action, which was supposed to be taken by these stakeholders. So there were approximately 3 parts to this group exercise. What happened was, after being provided to with this case study, we were provided with 2 minutes in order to read the case study and obviously think about the possible plan of action which the stakeholders were required to take. Then after that, the first part of the group exercise consisted of providing your specific plan of actions with respect to different stakeholders. So what happened was that we were not supposed to take a voluntary stand over there. The invigilator itself pointed out, as in whomsoever they wanted to, and that particular person was supposed to elaborate their opinions regarding the whole case study within a span of 1 minute. So the first mistake, or maybe the major mistake which a person could do at this point of time is that they lose a track of time. As in that 1 minute, when we are supposed to provide your opinion with respect to all the five stakeholders, most of the times what happened was that the candidate forgot about the time, and they were only able to cover, say, the first two or maybe the first three candidates, first three stakeholders. So what I would like to suggest is that if it's possible, it's important that you keep the track of time very wisely, because they don't hesitate to cut you short. There were a few people in my group itself, the starting one, obviously, who were not very much aware about the whole procedure, who were cut short between their third or maybe their second stakeholder itself. So this was the first exercise of the first part of the group exercise. Then the second part was wherein all of us were supposed to provide a conclusion, as in, a plan of action which was agreed by all of us. So for instance, like, if we talk about the case study which I mentioned, the CEO part, the CEO stakeholder which we're talking about, all of us decided that right now the best course of action, or maybe the instant course of action that the CEO could take, is that he should go in for you could say, a proper presentation, as in a public presentation, wherein he is making himself available to the press or maybe to the general public, in order to take the responsibility of all the actions which the company had already taken. So this was an instance which I would like to share. And apart from that, this was the second part of the group exercise. Then moving on to the third part, wherein we no, no, sorry. The wherein we are concluding the whole plan of action, that was the part of the second exercise itself. So when we are discussing, we had approximately 6 to 7 minutes, and then in the end, one of us took the initiative of providing a conclusion, in a proper bullet-based form to the invigilator. Then in the fourth, you could say the third part of the group exercise was like, it was a kind of a twist, as in we didn't expect it, obviously, because group exercise is meant wherein we all of us are supposed to work in a team. So that was what was going on up till now. Now, what happened was that the invigilator decided that we would be dividing you in a group of four. And then the first four people would be saying for the conclusion, and the second four people would be saying against the conclusion. So it was, you could say, that a combination of group exercise as well as group discussion. Then at this point of time, the mistake which all eight of us combined did was that this third part was supposed to last, you could say, for approximately 7 to 8 minutes. Now what happened was that, again, most of us lost the track of time, because of which in those 7 to 8 minutes, we only focused on specifically two or three stakeholders. We were not able to cover all the five, which was expected from our part. Then obviously the invigilator, the moment they understood that that particular threshold which was provided to us had crossed, as in that 7 to 8 minutes threshold, then they cut us short. And from there itself, we were supposed to just leave the meeting altogether. We are not supposed to just leave the meeting room. We were supposed to leave the meeting altogether. Now, what happened was discussion was allowed for 6 to 7 minutes, as I've already mentioned. Now, moving on towards a personal interview. Now, obviously, the first question which a candidate might think of is that how are we supposed to move towards a PI part if we are leaving the meeting altogether? What happened was that before the interview, you received a mail wherein there were specific Zoom links which were provided with respect to group exercise, with respect to personal interview, and as well as DP. So after completing your GE and leaving the meeting, you were supposed to access the PI via the second link which was provided. So moving on, in case of my PI, there were two candidates. One was a male and another was a female. And obviously started at 2:50. There were, some span wherein we were supposed to wait for the turn, or maybe, the whole waiting room procedure and everything. So that's why it took some time to start the PI. So it started at 2:50. Duration was again 10 to 12 minutes. And there were two panelists, as I mentioned. One was male and another was a female. So panelist one, the first panelist was a male member. Now what he did was that apparently the whole, I would say, the PI experience did not focus a lot on you could say, my work experience or my acads for that matter. So apparently they already have some sort of questions in their mind, because of which they were, they didn't drifted from that particular, you could say, the set of questions alone. So the first panelist, as far as I remember, the first thing that he was fixated upon, or maybe the only thing which he was fixated upon, was ESG. Now, those of you who don't have any idea with respect to it, that is environmental, social, and governance responsibilities that a company needs to fulfill. In order to stay, you could say that a large cap company or maybe a small cap company, everyone or every company has certain responsibilities with respect to societies. So the ESG is a norm or maybe a structure which is provided by the government, wherein you are provided, as in with, with the certain sort of responsibilities which the government, which the company needs to fulfill. So the first question which the panelist asked me was, "Are you familiar with ESG or no?" So I just nodded my head, and I tried to explain it somewhat as I'm trying to explain it right now over there as well. Then the second question was, if yes, is this parameter reliable? As in, most of the time, what happens is that this is a parameter which is very subjective. You don't have like a company could be able to manipulate it a lot. So obviously, this perspective might differ from person to person. This is what I said in my interview and elaborated a bit, but obviously it depends on person to person. So my elaboration would not be of much significance over here. So moving on to the third question, as you could clearly see, they gave me another question which was related to ESG only. Then the fourth question was what do you call? You could say that's a scenario based question again related to ESG. So the mistake which I did on my part in this particular question was that when they presented, let me just give you a second in order to read this statement or read this question. Let me just read it for you for that matter. We are a BOD of a company, as in the board of directors of a company, convinces that the expenditures incurred in ESG by our organization are justified. So I created the whole picture in my mind. They clearly said that you could assume anything and anyone for that matter, as in the type of the company, the scale of the company, whatever it is that you want to do, you could do it. There is no issues with respect to that. But the mistake which I did on my part was that the basic questions which were required to be asked on my side to them, as in, with respect to, say for that matter, if I'm assuming a few things, it's important to be conveyed. That particular part I lacked. I forgot to mention those particular things. So probably you could consider it when it is being, or maybe similar type of question is being asked to you. Then moving on to the second panelist, the first question which she asked was related to 70-hour work week and 90-hour work week. Typical question, nothing major to discuss upon. As in, she clearly just wanted to assess, as in what my views were. She was not interested in what the other people were saying, or maybe what was happening at that point of time. She only wanted to assess that whether, first of all, I knew or not that this kind of thing is going on at this point of time, and apart from that, do I have any sort of view or maybe perspective with respect to the same. Then the second question was specific to me only, as in I've completed my CFA. So she was asking me that why didn't I move toward looking for better opportunities? Why I'm going for MBA now? Then, as far as I remember, there were a few more questions, but right now I'm not able to recall the rest of them. So moving on. Then, after completing the individual set of questions which the panelists could ask, then we move towards a scenario-based question. So this was the scenario which they mentioned, as in I was a luxury perfume brand owner, and these two panelists were supposed to be a fitness trainers, and I was supposed to plan a sales pitch. Then in the second question, the whole story was approximately the same, as in my part was same, but these two invigilators were shifted from being fitness trainers to wedding planners. So accordingly, I tried to, manipulate my pitches accordingly. So I'm not so sure about it, that how you might think, but this is one of the instances which was mentioned over there. Then, after completing the whole PI experience, I was again supposed to lead the meeting altogether, not just the waiting room, not just the PI room where I was, probably shifted to, you could say. Then there was another link from which I started the meeting for DV procedure, and this was honestly the most, you could say, the tiresome part for me, considering that over here I approximately waited for 1.5 to 2 hours. So if any one of you is going towards, is probably preparing yourself for the whole procedure, try to understand that it might last for a good period of time. It's not just for the sake of 20 minutes or in case of GI, 20 minutes in case of PR, maybe 5 to 10 minutes in case of D. The waiting period is quite big, so prepare yourself accordingly, mentally and physically. And these were the documents which were required from my part. And it's just that if you had already provided them with all the documents, they would not be asking you for anything extra, and you would just be shifted to one of the SCMHRD student, and they would be doing the procedure from their end, as in you would not be required to provide them with anything extra documents. And you would be waiting over there for 5 to 10 minutes, and yeah, that's all. You would be done with DD. After that, you were again okay. So yes, the last part which I could mention is that after completing the DV, we were not supposed to leave the meeting. We were again supposed to go to the waiting room, and we were then shifted to a feedback room, wherein there was again a student who was asking us that how was the procedure, and is there any sort of questions which we were asking with respect to the whole procedure, or maybe or maybe the college for that matter. So all I could recommend you is that the procedure was quite smooth. The PI panelists were very friendly. They were not at all interested in grilling the person for that matter. And be prepared that it's not important that what you are thinking might be asked upon. As in, I still remember when we were waiting for the document for the DV part. At that point of time, there was a child who shared his PI experience, wherein he clearly mentioned that there was no sort of questions asked related to his CADs or maybe his work experience. The PI started with his family business and it ended with his family business. So just keep an open mind and try to just keep yourself calm, and I'm pretty much sure that you'll be able to complete the procedure pretty smooth. So thank you so much. That's all from my side.